Hello and welcome to the Pastor Well podcast. This is Hershael York, the Dean of the School of Theology at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm also pastor of the Buck Run Baptist Church in Frankfort. The Pastor Well podcast is dedicated to helping those who serve the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ be faithful in ministry. Today, what a joy, what a delight to have a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Paul Chitwood, the president of the International Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Christian mission organization really in the world. And we're going to be talking about preaching and theology and missions and whatever we want to talk about. Welcome, my dear friend Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. York. Good to be with you today. A friend in need is a friend indeed. You've always been a friend when I needed you, and I'm grateful for you. And good to sit down with you this morning.
Yeah, well, it is. We've been in denominational foxholes together.
More than one.
We have fought wars together. Never against one another. Always on the same side. And
for which I'm grateful.
Yeah. Well, me too. In November of 2018, you were elected president of the International Mission Board. So tell us about that. You were executive director of the Kentucky Baptist Convention, and before that, a longtime pastor. So how's it going at the IMB?
It's going well. The Lord has been kind. Southern Baptists have been kind. Our staff and our missionary force, everyone has just been so welcoming, so encouraging. To move from the role in Kentucky to this role was quite a jump, but preparation as a board member, you and I serving on the governing board of the IMB for many years and chairing the board, just a lot of connections throughout the course of my tenure as a pastor and professor here, and our state mission work that helped me prepare, not fully prepared. I don't know that one could be fully prepared.
Think one could be
to lead the IMB, but certainly helped give me orientation and context as I came into the role.
So about how many missionaries do we have on the field through the International Mission Board?
We're currently at about 3,700, give or take one or two. We're hovering right around that number and are really in a position to add a few. Thankfully, some of the difficult decisions that have been made in the last 4 to 6 years really have positioned us to where we now can start rebuilding the force. Of course, you recall when you and I were board members, we were at our height at about 5,600, close to 5,700. So to be down essentially 2,000 workers in the course of a decade is a very painful and harsh reality. And while we're not financially ready to ramp back up to those type of numbers, we are sending new missionaries to the field every day, and we have several fully funded positions that we're just waiting to fill.
Right. But, when we had that many missionaries, the reality was we really couldn't afford it, and we were in a negative income situation, and so things are on an even keel now. I think we're operating in the black.
We are operating in the black. We finished about $20 million to the good this past year. So that gives us a window of opportunity to rebuild the force.
These kinds of numbers, most of the people listening to a podcast like this, we just can't even fathom those kinds of numbers, and millions of dollars. So $20 million to the good sounds like a lot, but overall, what's the annual budget of the International Mission Board?
Yeah, $270-ish million. So when you talk about 20 million and 270 million, what is that preacher math about?
I'm even bad at preacher math.
Yeah. So is a fraction of the overall budget. However, as we break down the cost of sending and sustaining a missionary unit overseas. That does give us a window to add several missionaries.
Well, the burden on your shoulders is immense. Most people don't know, for instance, that our missionaries are, the IMB is self-insured. I was just in the home last week of IMB missionaries that were on the field in Asia, and the wife got cancer. Their testimony of the way that they were cared for was fantastic. The way the IMB cared for them, they had to come back here for her cancer treatments, and by God's grace, she is in remission now. But man, they were grateful for the kind of care that the IMB gave them. And So we think about sending missionaries and all, but the reality is that we're responsible for them, for their lives, for their children, and you have to think about not just mission strategy and missiology. You've got to think about lives and the education of their children, and how we help them care for elderly parents, and all of that comes in the role of being the president of the International Mission Board. It's a lot on your plate, isn't it?
Well, it's a lot. Thankfully, I have a good team. There's a great group of people there around us. We have about 300 staff members who serve in support roles and recruiting roles and training roles here in the States to keep those 3,700 well cared for, as you say. And it is a lot. We try to be the best stewards of every dollar, and so that places sometimes, instead of just contracting out for health benefits and education and all that stuff, we can actually do it a lot cheaper if we do it ourselves and really do it better quality, we believe. But that puts the work and the burden of responsibility upon us. But again, thankfully, in the Lord's kindness, we have a great team, and adding new people to the team with the kind of skills and gifts that are needed to be able to hear a report from a missionary like that, families who are going through very difficult times, to know that they're being served well and loved well by their IMB support team as well as Southern Baptists. What a blessing that is.
It really is. But to be responsible for that many people going into darkness, going into lostness, there's got to be a huge sense of spiritual warfare in your life. Has it been noticeable? Moving from executive director of the Kentucky Baptist Convention, which is a significant thing, leading 2,400 churches to cooperate, but now leading a missionary force like that. Tell us, what does it feel like spiritually?
Yeah, it's noticeable. It's palatable. There was a sense in which, and I knew from serving on the board with you, from watching at the time Dr. Rankin and his team, just I had some sense of the intensity of the spiritual warfare that they faced on a daily basis, and exposure in past roles. But it was interesting when I was in the first round of interviews for the position back last June. One of the committee members asked me point blank during the interview, why do you want to be president of the International Mission Board? To which I responded, I don't. And so the committee, a few people kind of laughed. I said, no, like seriously, I don't. I've seen what it takes. I've seen the toll it takes. I understand the spiritual warfare, the target really that's placed on the IMB and those who lead the IMB. Anyone who would pursue that, anyone who would go after it is nuts. But should the Lord call me to do it, should the Lord call us to do it, what an incredible privilege it would be. And certainly I feel very privileged and blessed to be in the role, but I feel every day the intensity of that spiritual warfare. I believe, like you, that the greatest work in the universe is the work of extending the gospel to the ends of the earth, is the battle for the souls of men and women and boys and girls from every tongue, tribe, nation. And in the midst of that battle, there is an enemy who comes full force against us. And the people that the Lord has sent out through the IMB are certainly on the very leading edge, front lines in the war. And as we support them, it puts us close to the battle. I feel, in fact, I shared with our missionaries in a recent email that the things that we are dealing with, things that are taking place, I feel that we are close to the gates. But we know that those gates shall not prevail.
That's right. Missiology is inextricably connected to theology. So tell me how your theology undergirds what you do. Talk even a little bit about your theological training.
Yeah, thank you for that. Of course, being trained here, it was really in my the end of here at Southern Seminary, the end of my Master of Divinity studies. After Dr. Moeller had come and begun to...
You came here in what year?
I came here in 92.
The year before Moeller becomes president.
Exactly. Honeycutt was still president. There was a lot going on here.
A little bit.
This was sort of the front line of the battle in the SBC for conservative resurgence, and this was such a, as you and I have talked even just before we came on air, such a critical piece in that struggle. So I saw a great transition, but near the end of my time in Master's of Divinity Studies, having some great, solid biblical professors who had come on, but it was actually in beginning PhD work here, and one class I point to in particular, it was under Tim Booker, a Theology of Evangelism seminar, where I was, for the very first time in my life, introduced to biblical theology. And that was almost a second conversion experience for me, and set underneath me a foundational belief system that, at least from an academic and intellectual vantage point, I'd never had and I'd never been exposed to. That carries me today. A high view of the sovereignty of God as we do the work of the IMB. If I sensed that this work rested on me, if I sensed that it was up to me to win these battles,
boy, we'd be in trouble.
Oh my gosh, I would be cowering in a corner somewhere. But it's on the Lord, and we have the privilege of being used.
Well, you mentioned about how we believe in taking the gospel to people, every nation, kindred, tribe, and tongue. Not only do we believe in going, we believe we're going to get there. We're going to win.
Absolutely. We've been assured of the victory. We've seen the vision of heaven.
We see the scene in heaven,
yes,
and they're there.
Amen.
And so to know that, yes, it's spiritual warfare. Yes, you're under satanic attack daily, but Jesus has already won the victory. He's, I say he's like a guy that we're like the guy who took his pocket knife and bragged. I took this pocket knife and I cut the tail off of a mighty lion. And someone said, well, if you're so tough, why didn't you cut off his head? He said, well, someone else had already done that.
That's good. Well, we can walk up to that lion with a grin.
That's right.
And knowing that we're in no danger.
Jesus has crushed his head. That's exactly right. And what a comfort. And those, as you are sending them out. Man, I think of, every day that I teach here, and I'm training these men, since I teach pastoral and minister and preach, and teach exclusively men, but their wives and women that come here and get trained for missions as well. When we send them out, we really are sending them out as sheep among wolves. And for thy sake, we're slaughtered all day long. Paul quotes there in Romans 8. It's true, and we don't take that lightly, but we know that ultimately there's victory. That undergirds everything, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, how wicked would we be, how wicked would I be as president of the International Mission Board if I take a young family of committed Christians here, say in Kentucky, send them to the heart of the Muslim world where I know they will face danger, peril, persecution, all that cross-cultural life and the threats to physical health. I mean, why would you do that to someone you love apart from knowing the Lord Jesus had called them, sent them there? He's already given them the victory. He goes before them. He goes with them. He protects them, guards them, guides them. Whatever price they pay to His glory, and they'll enjoy an eternal reward.
Right.
So instead of wicked, what a joy it is for us to have a part in this great work.
Paul, you are, I know you very well as a preacher. You're a preacher. And so all the years you pastored, what kind of preaching did you do? What philosophy of preaching do you have?
Yeah, as I matured in my preaching and in my education, understanding, expositional preaching became just what I did, and really, I'd say exclusively. There were very few times that I departed from that, and there was a very specific reason for it. If I did,
there are pastoral moments where you just got to say, take out the trash.
Something had to be addressed. Yeah. But even in that, let's find where in Scripture is addressed, and let's expose what Scripture says about this issue. So, that served me well. It obviously it strengthens your preaching when you're word-centered.
Yes.
And understand that, hey, I don't have much to bring here, but the Lord has spoken. Let's hear from Him. And in the ministry that I carried out in a local church, the Lord blessed that because I believe He was blessing the preaching of His Word.
How old were you when you felt a call to preach?
I was 18 years old. I was a freshman in college. I was active in our church I grew up in, First Baptist Church of Jellicoe, and sensed a very clear calling to ministry, sitting in the pew on a Sunday night during revival services. And the Lord just spoke to me in a very clear way. I remember a line from Adrian Rogers. He was talking about the Lord speaking to him, and someone questioned, was that an audible voice? And he said, no, it was much louder than that.
Yeah.
And so that was the way it was for me. It was much louder than an audible voice when the Lord spoke.
Do you remember the first sermon you ever preached?
I do. It was terrible. It was a Wednesday night. Our pastor had just resigned, the chairman deacons, because...
How old were you?
I was 18.
Wow.
So the pastor, as he was leaving, I had announced a call to ministry, and Chairman Deacons came to me and said, we want to give you a chance to preach. Will you do that on Wednesday night? So I worked, for 3 weeks to get my sermon ready. I had 7 handwritten pages of manuscript. Thankfully, it snowed that night, so the crowd was about 15 people, and I worked through my manuscript in about 5 to 6 minutes, and prayer meeting ended early.
Oh, wow.
And some would today say, could you do that again? But my sermon didn't last very long.
How long does it typically take you now to, like, if you start from scratch, you're going to preach, or when you were pastoring, how long would you take to put a sermon together?
Yeah, 15 hours, basically 12 to 15, I would say, if I had the time. Mm-hmm. I'd prefer 20. But now I preach a lot because of pressure situations with less time invested.
Right.
But that would be my optimal preference.
One of the things that preachers, I think, sometimes fail to realize is that really you're building a storehouse. You're filling a storehouse your whole life. So it does not take me as long to prepare for a sermon at 59 as it did at 29.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah.
Because I've plowed this ground before, typically, and it does. You've got a storehouse to draw from. What I find is that being fresh with illustrations, that still always takes as much time to find good stuff there. There's, in fact, it may be longer. In a long-term ministry like I have, I've been 15 years at Buck Run. There are some illustrations that I repeat, and every time I repeat them, people know, you've used that before. They remember your illustrations.
Oh, yeah. Stories stick with us.
They really do. And so you've got to work hard to be fresh and to find new stuff. Now you're traveling around. Typically, you're preaching in places like just one shot, right? You're in and out. So do you tell me how you do that? Do you have like 5 sermons you rotate among, or do you have primarily one that you'll use for 6 months? How do you think about that now?
Yeah, I've probably got 10 that I kind of rotate through, although each assignment can interrupt me sort of going to the storehouse. And when I use sermons I preached before, I always try to go back and take serious focused time to review them, to mold them and shape them to the occasion, to the context, to the audience, and that gives a freshness to it. And I think people are able to sense that I'm there to share with them. I'm not just sharing what I share sort of everywhere I go. But for instance, this Sunday, I'm preaching at Bell Hills Baptist Church for Easter Sunday services. They don't have a pastor now.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So as the pastor was leaving, he was kind enough to call me and ask me. I'm now booked for the next 2 years, but most pastors aren't giving up the pulpit on Easter Sunday. So I did have Easter Sunday available when he called a couple of months ago, and accepted the assignment. So I'm preaching something new there, which is taking preparation time. But again, it's the nature of the request.
You're booked for the next 2 years?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it like my calendar exploded the day I was announced as
I'm just pointing
president.
out that I had you preach for me long before you were president of IMB. just saying.
As you probably know this, I operate kind of first come, first served basis. And so if someone asks,
there's just really no other way
it
to
doesn't
do
matter if there's 12 people or 1,200 people, I'm coming. But just because I've responded positively to invitations that have come, and 46, 47, 48,000 churches in the SBC.
Yeah.
Many of them would want the IMB president because of the role or the title. So it booked out pretty fast.
Yeah, I'll be the first to say that's not because you're Paul Chitwood.
No, not because of my preaching.
It's because you're president of IMB. But what a stewardship! I mean, that is so key. I mean, man, the IMB operates not as an individual entity. It operates on behalf of the churches of the Southern Baptist Convention. I mean, I know you and you know me, and we are first, last, and always churchmen.
Amen.
We believe in the local church, and you're not operating independently of the local church. You're operating in cooperation with those churches, and it's churches that send missionaries. The IMB facilitates that, but they're sent by churches, and so it's key that you're in churches and that they feel that connection with the IMB. Our support depends on it. Our future missionaries depends on it. I think I'm singing your song here.
Oh, absolutely. And in my mind, integrity depends upon it. If I'm going to do the job I was hired to do, I have to serve the churches. I have to serve Southern Baptists. But I think that's what this job is about. Certainly we're serving the Lord, we're serving the kingdom, his kingdom cause. But the IMB was created by churches and is their missionary sending arm. So to affirm both in my words and in my conduct, my availability, my accessibility to the local church, my affirmations of the local church and of Southern Baptists, to walk in line with Southern Baptists, to speak in line with Southern Baptists, I think that's all very important to this role.
Are there you looking at any projects, any particular thing that, as you're serving as president, leading, or anything you're wanting to write, any particular place you're wanting to go that you've not gone, anything like that? Looking ahead,
yeah.
Or are you just trying to keep your head above water?
Right now, I'm trying to keep my head above water. We do have just got back from Uganda. I've got a trip. In fact, I'm in a window here of 6 months where I'll be somewhere different overseas each month during those 6 months. And that's a great opportunity for me to see the work, interact with our missionaries, get that frontline view of the field. It's already paying dividends, although I'm just 2 or 3 trips into that, and that's been a tremendous blessing. So I've sort of laid aside all other outside interests. I've resigned my adjunct teaching here at Southern. Someday I may be able to do some of that again. I am working. I was about 2/3 of the way through a Master of Nonprofit Administration at Mendoza School of Business at Notre Dame. And that was kind of a professional development degree for me when I was at the KBC. So I'm trying to decide if I am able to continue with that or take a semester off and then jump back in. But other than that, I'm just trying to focus in on the role. There's a lot to do. Organization of 4,000 people. Yeah. The magnitude of the budget, the work, our constituency. There's a lot to do really to get my feet under me and to get going in the role, to get momentum. And the first stage of that really is a listening and learning process, and I'm in the midst of that listening and learning process. In fact, as you'll remember from your time at the IMB, acronyms, I think only the U.S. military would use more acronyms than the IMB. And so I've created my own. I want to be sure that everybody knows I'm studying acronymish and trying to fit in. And so I've created my own acronym. I'm trying to do it all during these first 6 to 12 months. Ask, listen, learn. And then I'll lead out of this period of ask, listening, and learning, and lots of perspective, and like you, lots of opinions about the IMB and its work from the different seats I've had, but I've never sat in the president's seat. It's a much different perspective that you have as president.
Yeah, it absolutely is. That's true anytime you are in any other chair than the lead chair, and you think you know. And then when you sit in the chair, suddenly you go, "Oh, I didn't know it all." I was an associate pastor at Ashland Avenue for 7 years, and then went to seminary for 3. When I came back as pastor, it was a different ballgame. I couldn't believe it. I thought it would be a very small change to sit in that chair. Suddenly, when everything is on your shoulders, you got nobody to hide behind. It does. You feel that. You feel that.
You really do. Some of the most gratifying calls I've had in ministry, you probably had these calls before, Hershael, as well, from a guy who used to be on staff or as associate pastor or whatever with me, who would go on to become a pastor. And the day would come when he would call me on the phone and say, "Pastor, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I had no idea what you were dealing with.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I caused you the headaches or second-guessed you. Now I understand it." And so that was, it's always gratifying when people recognize the burden of that top leadership role.
Another part of your schedule, though, that we've not talked about is you've got a family. So tell us about your family.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a 22-year-old son, newly married, who is here in Kentucky still. He's in Richmond. He's got a semester left at the Eastern Kentucky University. Beautiful young wife, Derica. She's a student there as well. Great young lady. We have a daughter here in Louisville who has a couple semesters left in University of Louisville nursing program. And she's doing well. That's been tough, moving away from kids. We were a close family. Then we took a couple kids with us. Our daughter Kai is 12. She's a 7th grader. She's getting settled into her new school and new life. And then we have a 7-year-old daughter, Lily, whose adoption we just completed in December. So the timing of that, the Lord was gracious in allowing us to get that wrapped up. But they're doing well. My wife, Michelle, she took her early retirement. She had 20 years in here in Kentucky as a public school teacher, was able just within a month to take early retirement from the school system here. One of the benefits of the role, thankfully, the board has provided for my family to travel with me. And so that helps a lot, given the intensity of the travel schedule. You don't want to be gone from those girls irresponsibly. So our daughter Kai accompanied us to Uganda. My wife and my daughter went, and then Kai and Lily both will be traveling with us to some of the meetings this summer. And our nursing student daughter will be going as well. In fact, chairman of our board is a physician, and he gives medical checkups to missionaries during these large gatherings of the meetings. We call them AGMs over the course of the summer.
AGMs, I've been to a few of those.
Yeah, so my daughter, he's recruited my nursing student daughter to come and serve as a nurse to him. So she'll be traveling with us and serving the missionaries this summer as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. What a wonderful way to coalesce these things and serve together.
It's good to have them as a part of this work.
Well, it has been a joy to have you on, Pastor Well. I like to end every interview with what I call the twinkling of an eye round. So I've just got some quick questions to ask you.
Right.
Now, you can answer them briefly, but if you care to elaborate, feel free. But here we go. You ready?
Yes, sir.
What preachers have most shaped you? 2 or 3?
Adrian Rogers has shaped me deeply. Hershael York's sermons, I don't just say that to flatter you here, but watching and listening to you during the time that I was coming to convictions about expositional preaching was very helpful to me.
Well, I'm honored.
Yeah.
Turkey or deer?
Oh, anything with a bow.
All right. UK or UT?
UT.
Oh, my goodness. Calipari or Barnes?
Barnes, of course.
Oh, where did you and I first meet?
Where did you and I? Probably at Adam Dooley's wedding.
It was Adam Dooley's wedding. I married them. You were best man?
No, but I was.
You were a groomsman?
A groomsman, yeah.
Okay. And what would you say is your key leadership principle? No, that's hard.
Yeah, dependence upon the Lord.
Okay. Yeah. As a teenager, did you ever listen to Petra?
No.
You didn't?
No, I was a Southern rock fan.
So you didn't go the Christian rock stuff?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, probably should have, but I didn't.
Favorite vacation spot?
Favorite vacation spot? Probably Kona, the Big Island.
Yeah, where did you hear about that?
A friend of mine keyed me in.
Oh, well, what a good friend to have. If you could take Michelle anywhere in the world, just the two of you tomorrow, where would you go?
Turtle Bay, Kona, Big Island.
Yeah, amen. All right. Well, you got to try Zihuatanejo one day too in Mexico. It's an incredible place where they go at the end of Shawshank Redemption, and it's it's tremendous. So it's also another favorite place. So, well, Paul, you're a dear friend, man. I love you, not just in the Lord. I love you as a brother. I just love hanging with you. And
Thanks,
the
Doc.
worst thing about you taking this role is that I don't get to be around you nearly as much, and I miss you. But I would not have you back for the world. I'm glad you are where you are, and admire you as a man of God, a leader, and a preacher. And I just thank you for being with us today on Pastor Well. I thank all of you who tuned in. If you've not yet subscribed, make sure you do so on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. I look forward to seeing you again next time on Pastor Well.